Death had come to Aemilius, and it stood before him, and it stared him in the face. And though he had spent a great deal of time thinking how he would face death, how he would carry the honor of his ancestors, how he would speak poetry and be remembered for his nobility, his fearlessness, and above all his Roman pride, all he could think of was, not like this. They had been heading back from the village, like they'd done 100 times before, racing across the plain, up the hill, around the 3 big rocks. He had been about to shout at the boys to wait up when Marius's horse had reared and thrown him. Moments later, the other 3 mounts had lost their minds as well, eyes bulging with terror, bucking and thrashing, screaming in protest. Not like this. Lucan had gotten off unharmed and tried to grab the reins, only to have his mare half twist her head off as she tried to bite him before bolting off the path into the scrublands. Without the horses, they would not be home until sundown, and they'd get an earful for their troubles. After the initial shock, Vincius had complained, as he always did. And then, the thing had appeared. It seemed to come out of nowhere. Lucius had been trying to convince them again that he'd been trained as a hunter, and it was okay because he could track the horses, and his uncle wouldn't be annoyed. And all the while, as they argued as to what had caused it, wolves, big cats, snakes, none of them had thought to look up. Aemilius had tried to remember his training, but the sword master had prepared him for shield walls and formations, for combat against human foes, and thought little of his talents. He had done his best, but always hoped that death would come to him nobly, like it had done to the men in his family before him. Not like this. He couldn't even rise to his knees. Everything was too much. The ridge of red rock was suddenly painful to look at. The sand was rough and warm under his palms, but despite the evening sun, he was cold with sweat. It had finished Marius off quickly, in a spray of blood and gurgled screams. Lucan and Vincius had put up more resistance, shouting for him to join, to come on, to fight, and he had watched them, watched the thing rise to head height on powerful wings that beat the stink of it towards him, watched its talons shred their flesh with a sinking weight in his stomach. It looked so horribly effortless. One moment they were there, waving their swords, shouting and shrieking like you would to scare off any normal animal. The next, Lucan was sinking to his knees, clutching an arm reduced to strips of meat, hanging limply from his elbow. Stricken by his cousin's fate, Vincius took his eyes off the creature for a moment, and his face disappeared, sending him spinning to the ground with the force of the blow. The thing knew too. It knew exactly when there was no threat anymore. It landed gently, almost tenderly, and turned. Slowly, painfully slowly, it turned to look at him. And having had only a side view thus far, Aemilius now saw the whole of the thing.